Welcome back to the Ferrotech podcast. I'm Lindsay Deku, Senior Account Manager here, and I have Chris Carr, CEO, on the line. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well, thanks. So Chris actually has a great blog on building out buyer personas. And so we're going to dive into that today. Chris, do you want to kick things off? I have a couple questions for you,
well, thanks. Thank you for joining us. We try to put out this podcast pretty regularly. One of the jokes that Lindsay and I were talking about prior to this is that I don't think the world really knows that we record most of these podcasts all at the same time, all in the same day. We have our whole wardrobe changes. And we have
literally my wardrobe changes right
here. Yeah, it's pretty funny, but it allows us to have it allows us to have continuity between messages and stuff like that. But it is pretty funny because it makes it sound like we're here week to week. But
hey, I got a fresh shirt. It's a new day.
I know you got your Harry Potter outfit on, and we're ready to talk buyer personas.
Who wrote up Harry Potter? Okay, so let's jump in. I do have a couple of questions for you. I think one of the things that we should just get out of the way right now is like, why do I need a buyer persona to market?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, let me kind of talk about what you probably shouldn't do, and let me do that. I'm gonna actually share my screen in just 1 second here.
Okay.
In that process of like how to work on your message and stuff like that, what we talk about is the idea of it's kind of like the idea of trying to understand where do people gravitate and what messages do we gravitate towards. And so what we'll be doing when we develop buyer personas is we're trying to figure out who are the people specifically that might be buying your products and services. And so what I'm going to be able to do is we develop these buyer persona exercises. And in those exercises, we're going to identify who are these ideal patient personas or who are these ideal buyer personas. And then we put it into a grid and then we see how does it change from one buyer persona, from one buyer persona to the next buyer persona and to the next buyer persona. Because what I don't want to do is be in a scenario here, like let's pretend like I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I don't want to have people that have an ACL tear and then they come to my website and I start drip marketing to them about our spine center. The reality is that that's how you market to like an unsegmented market. That's usually very ineffective. Mm-hmm. We see that all the time. They have one big list and they just do one message to all, that entire list. But open rates dramatically increase when you go and you segment your list into different buyer personas. So that same individual who might have a torn ACL is going to be in a scenario where they go and they're going to start to get drip marketing about knee pain. And what I've done there is I've sort of gotten the right message to the right client at the right time. And what happens is that usually that skyrockets, like that improves open rates, conversion rates, you name it. When you hyper personalize, you get dramatically different results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that this is a universal thing. I love the example of the healthcare because those services are so segmented. But I think that it applies to every industry, even just understanding who your client is, the language that they speak, where they spend their time. Those are huge factors that play into how you're going to market to them.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's funny because I tell this story about Jack Canfield. Jack Canfield was, I think you've heard of the idea of the chicken soup for the soul guy. Mm-hmm. He wrote this best-selling book. It's actually really hard. He had a really hard time producing his first book. But rather than trying to be like lightning in a bottle and try to do it all over again, he realized the power of buyer personas. What he did was he started writing these short stories in each different category, each different buyer persona. And the joke I say in the sales process is, you know what, like, are you going to read the chicken soup for the fireman's soul? Like, well, probably not if you're not a fireman. Mm-hmm. The same reason why I would read chicken soup for the soccer player's soul, because I played soccer in high school and dabbled with it in college.
Yeah, which one am I?
Yeah. So
I'm a woman.
that's right. That's right. You know what I mean? And so what happens here is that if you create content, but you hyper personalize it, you're going to see considerably greater adoption rates. But what it does do is it also allows the potential client to know that, you know what, these people know they have empathy for where I'm at and what my struggles are, what my challenges are. So when we write content in that way, it works 9 out of 10 times.
It's the connection. It's the human connection and feeling heard. I think for a lot of clients, it's like most of our clients are the helpers. Like they want to be of service. But it's also like communicating to their potential clients that we hear you and understand, and we want to help you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, empathy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in that process, what we also do, and I'm going to have you unpack this a little bit more, is that there was a book called Building a Story Brand. The author's name's escaping me, but he talked about how to turn this messaging so that you have a hero of your story and that you have this entire buyer's journey. And so we took that concept and we modified it. We call it Story Guide. And, you know, when we have buyer personas and we do those exercises, we also take it one step further and try to figure out, you know, how to create a good message for each buyer persona. So unpack that a little bit for us, Linz, because, you know, you do this on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So, and it is just taking the buyer personas one step further. So understanding who your buyers, your target buyers, and your ideal buyers, because there are definitely scenarios where you may enjoy working with specific groups of people more than others. And so we want to be able to target them and then position them as the hero of the story. So it's really unfortunate. A lot of people market and make themselves the center of the story. And they're about like, this is what we do. And this is, where we are in the market or whatever. But when you're communicating with potential clients, it's very important to position the potential customer as the hero of the story, and then come alongside them as the guide, and then give them, and it's actually a very strict framework, but putting your marketing into that story framework actually, there's actually, Barb says it perfectly, our content strategist, she explains that story, like we've all been told stories our entire lives, and they've actually made pathways, like well-worn pathways in our brain, and that's where we want to put our client stories, because they'll be memorable. The people will remember them, they'll connect with them, and they'll come back to you. Even if they're not ready to buy now, they'll think of you next time they have a need. So utilizing that story guide framework it's been a huge shift for us, and it has been an incredible shift for our clients. So I really love it.
Yeah, because that's sort of one of the things that we see a lot of times is being in a scenario where we'll work with a certain client and you'll go to their website. Let's pretend it's an orthopedic client, right? And they'll say, well, we have a variety of different specialties, and we have a doctor who's going to help you with knees, he's going to help you with spine, he's going to help you. And it's constantly like, you know, this is who we are and this is what we do. And this is who we are and this is what we do. But what happens here is that a lot of times, if you could just pivot the message and says, hey, you know what, where do you hurt and how can we help? It's a very dramatic, it seems like a subtle shift, but from a user's perspective, like you said, those stories are already ingrained in our mind, and you'd think less in that process. And when you think less in that process, what happens is that the story just kind of goes, it's less thinking, it's less to digest, it's less mental energy.
Yep.
And usually that's how they gravitate to your brand.
Yep, absolutely. I think that, I feel like we could talk about Story Guide for forever, but with the buyer persona in particular, it's showing them essentially what their life could be like if they choose you. And that's what we want them to understand. And it, again, exactly like you said, it's less mental energy for them to connect with a story. And then they don't have to think about every pro and con that is possibly presented. Like, they don't have to sort through information. It's like that instantaneous connection, and then recognizing what their life could be. And then obviously they're going to work with you. Yeah. So I do want to bring it back to buyer personas real quick. And I think I had one more question. We kind of talked through the like why and some of the mistakes that happen when you are thinking about marketing and buyer personas. But then I wanted to talk about how do you then use that in your marketing?
Sure. So one of the things that we'll do in our process here, and let me see if I can tee up the right slide, is give me 1 second here. One of the things that we'll do when we develop a marketing approach, what I'll probably try to do is be in a scenario where we write content and then we push that content down to a funnel, through a funnel. And in the process of going through a funnel, what I'm going to try to do is go to these landing pages. The landing page is essentially, it's like an ethical bribe, which basically means I'm going to give you really good content, but I'm going to do it in exchange for your name and your email address. And what's going to happen when you do that is you're going to go to an automation system where I'm going to be able to track every movement that you do throughout your marketing. But if I go back a step, what you didn't hear is just in this ebook here, you didn't just say people that have back pain, here's what to do. Here to how to manage back pain. This was very specific to managing back pain. It's a cyclist guide to managing back pain. Because what this organization was smart enough to do is to say, you know what? If someone comes to our website and I want to find out about them, they're not going to be in a scenario where they, on their social media profile, they're like, hi, I'm Chris Carr and I have back pain. It doesn't happen. So what they did was they said, you know what? Who are the people that have back pain? And in that process, like if I can gravitate and I can find those exact people, where would they live? And I know that cyclists, if you spend any decent amount of time on your bike, it always ends in lower back pain. And so what we're able to do is work backwards and say, this is where they live. This is the buyer persona, the ideal patient persona. This is where they live. Here's marketing material specifically designed to them. And just like the Chicken Soup for the Soul book, if I wrote a managing back pain book, the average cyclist might grab it. But if I say this is managing back pain for cyclists, the chances of opening it are significantly higher.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So we've been talking about buyer personas, you and I, within Faratech for years. And it seems like a lot of the industry is really catching up to it now, especially with, I want to talk for a second about targeting on different channels, because I think a huge piece of the buyer persona is where your buyer personas are spending time. And a lot of channels, like if you're a B2B client or a B2B business owner or whatever, a lot of your target buyers are likely hanging out on LinkedIn. And I think the LinkedIn targeting has come a long way. Do you want to speak at all to that? And Facebook too, if you want to go into either of those.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that you can do is when you, give me 1 second here. I'm just trying to tee up the right slide for it though.
My chair keeps creaking and it's kind of annoying me.
Yeah, I'm always kind of multitasking to try to figure out how to get to the right slide, but also stay fully engaged here. Let me kind of show you my screen here. So in this process, let's say hypothetically, I go and I get someone to come to my website. Assuming you're meeting the minimum visitor, like there's a criteria that you're going to need. Commonly, you need at least 500 people come to your website or 1,000 people for some of the other programs here. But one of the things that we're probably saying to do, one of the things we're saying to do, the people that come to your website, there's actually going to be a tracking code in Facebook talk. It's called a pixel. And a pixel is going to go onto that potential user's computer. And what it's going to allow us to do is it's going to be able to allow us to target right to these specific buyer personas. So if I'm a shoe enthusiast, right, I'm going to be able to know that shoe enthusiasts are coming to my website. But what Facebook also allows me to do is it also allows me to create lookalike audiences that says, hey, this is your buyer persona. These are the people that have engaged in Know Your Brand. But this buyer persona lookalike audience is the same exact persona. But this is how I reach people with your message and your story that don't know you exist.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where sort of your lookalike audience works. And that they do the same thing in Facebook and through a lot of other social media platforms as well.
Yeah, I love that learning process. And it's really cool to see that network expand.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're only scratching the surface on how personas are going to be affected. Like, so think about this from a Google perspective, right? Google wants to advertise to you. They want your money, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
The best way to get your money is to know you inside and out. To do that, they love social media because you know what? I'm going to go on Facebook and I'm going to say, this is who I am. This is my kids. This is what I have interest in.
Yeah, these are all my interests.
Exactly. This is my motivations. This is what pisses me off. This is what I want to wear. All that stuff's all in one place. And when that happens and you spoon feed Google, right, you're going to get rewarded for that. And what's going to happen here is that advertisers that allow Google to know their users better and better, you're just going to find that this process is just going to be, it's just going to get easier and easier to market because these platforms want you to break people down into these little silos so that they can market to them effectively.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want it. They want it. You want it. And then this is the weirdest thing. And this is where it gets people get that I laugh at this is people like, it's so creepy. I go on Amazon, I look at a pair of shoes and then those shoes follow me around wherever I go. I kind of like it.
No, I saw a meme that I identified so hard with the other day. It was like, it said something like me describing my perfect duvet cover so that Facebook will show it to me. I have to go look for it. Like I totally do that.
It's crazy. You know, I mean, like because I know everyone's doing it, the creepiness factor that ship has passed for me.
Yeah.
Right? So now I'm like, well, this is the type of cycling shoe or running shoe I'm looking for. And now Facebook, show me things.
Spoon feed it to me. Exactly. Yeah, I do. I appreciate it.
Now, what's getting very interesting is the people that are cutting the cord. I read this article. The people that are cutting the cord for cable, and then they're going to be switching to almost all internet TV. Your ads that you're going and you look at a website, it's going to show up on your social media feed. It's going to show up, on YouTube, and then soon it's going to be showing up on your TV. Yeah. You're not going to get away from it.
No.
You can try to fight it, but like I said, we act like we don't like it, but we like it.
Yeah. It is creepy, but it's also appreciated. I don't know. That's just.
I do think that I'm waiting for them to create a button. I was like, I bought those shoes.
Sell me. Exactly. They just want you to have more of them, Chris.
I know. That's right.
Okay. I think we're just about out of time. Do you want any last thoughts before we wrap up buyer personas?
No, I mean, I do think that I want to encourage our audience to come back to our blog often, listen to our podcast, watch some of these videos. But if you're interested in understanding how to transform your marketing and you some of the things that we talked about here resonated with you, you have a very specific target audience you're trying to reach, please reach out to us. I'm going to say this in every podcast we ever do. We are not a heavy-handed sales company. We want to give you as much information as possible to make the right decisions. We want to save you money because I'm doing this 19 years. And almost every person that comes to me has a horror story of the previous marketing company they worked with.
So we want to save you money, but we also want to make you a bunch of money.
That's true. Very well put. Very well put. So please continue to tune in, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.